Good morning, good day, good afternoon to all our viewers and CX leaders who have logged in from different parts of the MENA region. Today, as countries worldwide continue to manage the impact of COVID-19 crisis, survival remains top of mind for businesses in every other market. Businesses that emerge from the lockdown period more or less intact will have a second problem on how to regain traction in a recessionary environment and re-engineering CX to suit the current situation. Delivering new customer experience has become the centerpiece of many enterprise strategies to achieve sustainable growth. In fact, in a recent survey research which indicates that 89% of enterprises are using digital technologies to redefine customer experience, allocating as much as 30 to 35% of their marketing budgets to experience design. And this share is expected only to increase by 2022 to 50 to 55% by Everest Group. Now, the top priority for enterprise is to invest in customer experience even in an economic downturn, according to the Everest Group survey. Now, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to our CX Transformation Virtual Summit. Next, I would like to introduce the conference chairperson, Heba Fadel. Heba has been a senior customer experience and operational professional. Heba carries close to 20 years experience in strategic customer experience management, operations, quality assurance, process improvement, and project improvement. She also has established turnaround a number of customer experience and operation departments at leading organizations across several industries, primarily e-commerce, retail, logistics. She has worked with some of world-renowned organizations which have been benchmarked for customer experience, including Uber, Glovo, OLX, Outlook, Bay Payment Solutions, IKEA, MH Alshaya, Aramex, to name a few. And last, she has been with Sawal. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you, Heba, amongst us. Welcome to the CX Transformation Virtual Summit. The stage and the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for the intro. And it's a pleasure to be part of the Customer Experience Summit for the second time. I'd like to thank the organizers, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be chairing this event. I'd just like to start with a few words. Of course, 2020 has been an extremely challenging year for everyone with the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's been overwhelming for individuals, for businesses. Fingers crossed the last few months of this year actually, I hope, have a positive turn of events. So with the onset of this pandemic, businesses had to literally overnight shift strategies, cut budget, change direction, and work on immediate risk mitigation plans running in survival mode. Customer priorities during this pandemic have been shifted due to either people losing their jobs or afraid of losing their jobs, or the uncertainty that the future holds, making their resources limited. And therefore, focusing only on the essentials that are needed to survive this crisis. So due to this, customers are the most vulnerable at this time. And this is why customer experience should take up the bigger share from the leadership teams and the focus and the strategies of any company. And it's not about complicated customer experience strategies or fancy KPIs that we would usually have time to do across months or years in our strategies and roadmaps. It's actually all about going back to the basics and focusing on some very simple pillars. And I'd start with empathy. I mean, when a customer is very vulnerable during this pandemic, empathy is very, very important, because companies have to show that they care. And it's simple as it sounds, but companies need to slow down and actually focus on the empathy in all touch points. The second thing that I want to talk about is trust. Obviously, customers have to trust, because they're not, as I said, they're looking at the necessities. They're not buying something or purchasing something that is nice to have. No, these are the survival necessities. So they need to trust the company. They need to trust that they're going to get their things on time if it's a delivery, and they need to, earn the loyalty with this company. And this is the point where the company really needs to focus on reflecting their values. The customers are going to remember this. It's going to be a lingering moment where they're going to remember which companies actually had a positive impact in fighting the pandemic and how they treated their customers through it. They're going to remember it for, I think, forever. Safety, of course, is another pillar that's very, very important, that should not only be through emails and words and a lot of false promises. Companies should ensure that safety is also part of every touch point in everything that they do. Another extra too would be accessibility. Of course, during panic mode, customers need to be able to access the company that they're dealing with across different channels and in a very timely way. And of course, consistency. So all the companies have to be as well consistent in what they do, and everyone has to be communicating to customers in the same manner. The focus here is actually for corporates to be shedding the light more or focusing more on emotional as opposed to transactional strategies with customer experience. And the situation is very dynamic. So there's no time for the long-term strategies and not even quarterly strategy. Some things have to be changed even on a weekly basis, maybe even on a daily basis. So some countries were going on lockdown, and on-demand services had to change things on a daily basis based on the governmental decisions. So this is what corporates had, needed to do to keep a real-time pulse on the constant changes. And the most important thing, which coincides with obviously our priority as customer experience, is this is the most critical time to stay close to your customers and to actually listen to what their priorities are and not what the companies think they are. So as customer experience professionals, it's important that we come together and discuss what can be done and share the best practices. And this is why I'm very grateful to be part of this summit. It's not only about personal glory or one company's success anymore. It's about actually us as customer experience professionals making an impact on the global community. So we have a diverse and interesting collection of topics over the next 2 days, so today and tomorrow, from our CX guru speakers that will no doubt add a lot of value for all of us. So I've taken a bit too much time. Let me introduce our first speaker, who I'm lucky to have met. Peter Hafsor is the former Chief Customer Experience Officer at Riyadh Bank. And I was lucky to meet him in the Feb Customer Experience Summit in Egypt, and he was the chairperson at the time. Yeah, so I just like to introduce Peter. So he's a passionate advocate of the customer. He's led digital customer experience and business transformation teams across market-leading propositions in London, Europe, and the Middle East. He's led the design of the delivery of UK's first online fund supermarket. And what was very interesting for me to actually find out as well, that he led the customer experience proposition for a new pension scheme for over 11 million people to save for retirement. And I was very lucky as well to hear his very interesting story last summit about the state-of-the-art customer experience and innovation lab in Riyadh Bank, and of course worked on all transformation of all the customer centricity and customer experience of the bank that I'm sure a lot of other banks and professionals have learned from you. So thank you, Peter, for taking the time. Peter is going to be speaking to us about evolving role of a CX leader. And I think this is very, very important, as I was saying, that customer experience is going to be taking more of focus from leadership teams and corporates. So okay, the mic is yours, Peter.
That's great. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, really. So good morning, everybody, or perhaps it's good afternoon, depending on where you are. So welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today. I know that we've got many, many customer experience experts on this call. So it is a true honor to be here. As Hiba mentioned, my name is Peter Halser, and I am a customer experience and digital consultant working with several financial services companies in the GCC. And my specialism is helping organizations to transform the customer experience by applying innovative digital technologies. Prior to consulting, I was Chief Customer Experience Officer at Riyadh Bank for 6 years. And at Riyadh Bank, I set up the customer experience function from scratch, defined the CX strategy, and led a customer experience transformation program, really from concept development through to delivery. So although I'm currently working as a consultant, I've been at the coalface, I've lived it, I've seen what works, and perhaps more importantly, seen what doesn't work. And I'd like to share some of what I learned about the role of brand in creating a great customer experience, and indeed the role of the CX leader in embracing that. So for today's agenda, I'd like to focus on a couple of things. Firstly, I'll talk about the role of brand in the customer experience, and really why CX must embrace and encompass traditional marketing activities. I'll also talk about how we can leverage brand values to unify customer experience, and really the connection between customer experience and employee experience, and why they need to work so closely together. I'll also be discussing the role of the CXO in aligning the customer and the organization, and how brand can be leveraged really to drive CX transformation. So I think if we start on page 3, Mohammed, for this, I think you're controlling the slides. Let's start with the basics. Most of us would agree that the definition of customer experience is something like the following, and that is customer experience is your customer's holistic perception of their experience with your business or brand across all touch points. And this really shouldn't be contentious. To be honest, I simply Googled it, and I don't plan to spend a lot of time on this. But the important thing here is that customer experience isn't just about getting customer service. It spans from awareness, which will be driven through your advertising and social media activities, to product research, which is often driven through search engine optimization, web search, comparison websites, press and public relations, to navigating your website, to product purchase, and talking to the call center. So CX is made up of all of the touch points that are available to your customer. Next slide, please. And increasingly, those touch points are digital. In Saudi, I think it's actually previous slide, please. In Saudi, a market I lived in for 6 years, we have a huge degree of social change. The market is made up of a young, digitally native population who are voracious consumers of online content, especially social media content. And in Saudi, again, a market I'm very familiar with, is 55% of the population is under the age of 30. They had amongst the highest penetration of smartphones in the world. And at one point, Saudis were the highest consumers of YouTube content in the world. And perhaps more uniquely in GCC countries, product research is broadly done online and in social media groups within networks of group friends and families. So what all of this means, as a result, you can expect that your customer's first experience of your brand is likely to be through online advertising or social media. Mohammed, I'm on slide 5 now. And if those touch points don't look and feel the same, then customers will perceive a gap between what they expect of your brand and the actual experience that they get. I call it the experience gap. As an example, if you go out to the market and you're trumpeting that your brand stands for innovation and we're the innovative company, but the experience in the bank branch or the store or the service is underpinned by bureaucratic, paper-based processes, this will lead to a gap between expectations and reality. Similarly, if your brand stands for empowerment, but your employees aren't empowered to solve any problems, then you'll also have a gap between expectation and reality. And the important thing for me here is that customers will perceive this, and it will lead to a disjointed customer experience and a compromised implementation of your brand. And this will ultimately, of course, impact profitability. Next slide, please. So these touch points really need to be harmonized to create a consistent customer experience. But that doesn't happen by accident. Touch points are designed, and there's a whole profession around customer experience and service design which is aimed at doing this. It's the role of the customer experience team to integrate all of these touch points in such a way that they reinforce the brand. And this requires us to synchronize the experience across brand, social media, marketing, product proposition, channel design, fulfillment, and service delivery, a whole range of customer-facing activities. Next slide, please. And really, the CXO needs to be adept at working across all of these topics. It's really important that the CXO has the authority and the sponsorship to be able to do this. Next slide, please. Aligning experience to brand requires skills in brand strategy, proposition design, promotion, distribution, and customer service. And many of these skills would sit in a traditional marketing team. And that's why really the CX leader needs, to my mind, to be in a position to be able to lead and drive marketing activities. So to my mind, the experience officer really has become the new chief marketing officer because he needs to be able to orchestrate across all of these customer-facing activities. Next slide, please. I'd like to share a practical example of how brand can be linked to the design of the customer experience. At Bank, we had a number of brand values, and you'll all have a brand and have values that you believe will reinforce that brand experience. For us, our brand values were things like dependable delivery, creative solutions, complete coherence, and inspiring delight. But one of the challenges I find as a CX professional is that brand values can often be quite esoteric and very hard to actually translate into practical design of the touch points. So, what do these brand values really mean practically in terms of how the customer experience will be designed? So to guide us, we translated the brand values into a few CX design principles that could provide practical guidance of how each brand value would be embedded into the customer experience. And we developed 3 design principles to guide us in the design of each touch point. And the first one you see here on screen was always there for me. This is the idea that you are always accessible, you're always reliable, and you're always responsive. The second design principle was show me, you know me. And this is much more about personalization. You always know what I need. It's not just about the money. You understand my needs and you'll stand by me. I can trust you. And the final design principle was smart and creative solutions. Being clever, not just in our technology that should be clever, but our people should be clever, proactive, think outside the box, and think creatively. So having developed these 3 design principles, we then kind of broke them down into a number of different layers into both the psychosocial and emotional descriptions of what we want the customer to feel at each touch point. So Hiba earlier in her introduction talked about a focus on emotional rather than transactional aspects of the experience. So what we're trying to do at this layer of the pyramid is really get a description of what we want the customer to feel at each touch point. And then we further break that down into the attributes and initiatives that will create that experience or that feeling at each touch point. So as an example in this pyramid, the brand value of dependable delivery aligns to our experience design principle of always there for me. Always there for me, it kind of means dependability. And in our definition, always there for me is defined by this pyramid. At the very top layer, we describe what we want the customer to feel at that touch point. And the things that we identified were things like, my need or desire is fulfilled. I have time to focus on the things I enjoy, and I'm in control of this. The functional needs that are met by that customer or at that touch point are things, a little bit more functional descriptions like, I get what I need. I don't have to chase you. It saves me time and money, and I always know what's happening. And some of the attributes that we'll need to deliver at that touch point at the next layer down are things like, you do what you say you will. You always get back to me. I don't have to wait for me to come to you. You resolve it first time. You're easily accessible. Switching between channels is simple and smooth. You keep me informed, and it's clear and simple. From the attributes, we can drill down to identify the concrete initiatives that need to be delivered at each touch point in order to aid us in designing the touch point and ultimately to deliver the experience. So next slide, on the next slide, you'll see that some of these initiatives will be employee related. So we talk about employees will need to be empowered through training in both soft skills, for example, how to demonstrate empathy, and policies will need to allow them to do this. So delivering this initiative of empowering employees will touch a number of different aspects of the organization. It will touch your HR recruitment practices. It will touch the training practices. It might touch your risk policies in terms of what employees can and can't do to solve problems. And it might touch technology systems as well, because they'll need to be able to create these solutions, perhaps while the telephone is right, while the customer is right in front of them. So on slide 11 now, other initiatives might be technology oriented. The technology must be robust and enable those channels to be integrated. So this might drive a more, in a technical architecture point of view, much more, instead of having separate systems delivering separate channels, the systems will need to be integrated, perhaps through service-oriented architecture and omni-channel services calling shared web services. And finally, on the next slide, some initiatives will be related to the proposition. For example, the marketing materials might need to be much more clear about what the product or service will do for the customer. And the communication campaigns will need a standard on-brand vocabulary that is used consistently across all these channels. So this is a good example of how we're taking the brand values and breaking them down into some concrete initiatives that would need to be delivered. Now, when we went through this at Riyadh Bank, we identified 255 initiatives that needed to be delivered in order to transform the customer experience and align it to the brand values. And this became the scope of our CX transformation program. So it's a really good illustration of how you can translate brand into a program of work or initiatives to enhance customer experience. Next slide, please. I think importantly, in all of this, it's important, don't forget the employee, because the employee is a critical part of delivering this experience. Next slide again. In the above example I just talked about, we wanted the employee to be empowered to solve any issue. And you can't expect your employees to feel empowered to solve customer problems if their experience is unempowered. So just as we design brand values into the customer experience using this sort of pyramid framework, we could and should translate the brand values into the design of the employee experience to identify the concrete initiatives that will underpin each employee touch point with the company, from maybe their first point of contact with recruitment, through to the onboarding, through to the training, through to the day-to-day work, and ultimately through to exiting the company as well. And I believe that it's only by harmonizing both the customer experience and the employee experience around our brand values that we can create a really truly consistent, seamless experience for all. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to talk about the role of the CXO in leading organizational transformation. Because if brand and experience are really inextricably linked, then leveraging brand could really create the fulcrum to drive customer-centric change. So I'm going to share with you on the next slide, please. This is a slide that we used. If you could click one more time, it's kind of a build here. This is a slide that we used with our board when we were kicking off the CX transformation program. And we asked the board, what kind of company do you want to be? Or what do you think the goal of this CX transformation program should be? And we gave them a couple of different options to illustrate the impact that it might have. And the first option was, maybe you just want to be a better version of yourself. In which case, the operational focus of your CX transformation program would be things like fixing the basics and have relentless focus on KPIs. Things like, let's reduce waiting time in the branches. Let's reduce the length of time it takes to get a personal loan. Or let's answer the phone on the first ring. If that's the goal of your CX transformation program, and it's the type of company you want to be, then the role of brand is much more about a signifier of change. Something similar to, you might have heard the example of Avis and Hertz in the rental car industry. Avis for years and years and years has been #1, and Hertz was always #2, and they came up with the tagline around, "We try harder." And it's a good example about the role that brand can play in signaling that you are a better version of yourself. If you could click again to the next build on this slide, please. The other option we talked to the board about was, maybe you want to be more like the best international bank in the region. In this case, brand is being used a little bit differently in terms of using brand to drive demand. And you're also using data intelligently to drive acquisition and customer value, lifetime value management. In this case, yes, the role of the brand will be a signifier of change, but it will also be a focus, have a role as a marketing instrument, in which case your CX initiatives are likely to be more focused on maybe using artificial intelligence and text analytics in order to mine data better and target customers with better offers. Okay? You're starting to see here that the goal of your CX program will drive different types of CX initiatives. And the final example is maybe you want to be completely different and you want to actually compete on customer experience and be the best experience bank. And this is an example of, the examples pictured here is a bank called Umpqua, and they are based out in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And they tried to be a completely different bank, and the look and feel and the experience of it won't be anything like a traditional bank experience. In this case, the focus of the customer experience program is to differentiate by brand experience, and it will require significant work across all aspects of the organization. It will touch your people policies, it will touch your proposition, it will touch your physical environment, your procedures, your processes, and your systems. And yes, it is still a signifier of change, but really it becomes what I call the fulcrum of transformational change. And on the next slide, I just give a sort of example or of a mood board that might illustrate how that change would impact the organization. So, for example, I know that you can't read all of these boxes here, but for example, digital isn't something that just happens on the web. Digital will underpin every interaction with the customer, including enabling face-to-face service. So to enable this, our channels will need to be fully integrated and reuse web-based services to create an omni-channel experience. For example, Face ID could be used not just on your mobile app, but maybe also when the employee walks into the branch. In this mood board, employees will also be empowered to service customers differently. Employees won't sit behind desks. Instead, they'll be standing and engage customers in a more consultative, collaborative way. And in order to achieve this, our recruitment and training processes will need to change. Our point of service hardware, will need to be deployed. For example, you'll have to have iPad or tablet PCs that enable your employees to consult with customers while standing. The physical environment will change to reflect a more innovative approach. It would feel more like a store, perhaps you would say an Apple store rather than a branch. And the proposition will need to change to reflect a more creative approach to meeting customer needs. And this would imply a shift from selling products to selling solutions. And that probably ties back to what Heba was saying earlier about demonstrating empathy with customers, trust, and consistency. So in this way, you can see that implementing a customer experience that is driven by brand has the potential to touch every aspect of the organization, and it would be a truly transformational CX program. So next slide, please. Last slide. Just in summary, I hope this presentation has gone some way to making the case that brand and customer experience are really inextricably linked. They must work together to create truly seamless customer experiences. Also, I hope you've seen that it's the role of the CXO to ensure that brand values are embedded into the experience at every touch point, and that this includes the employee experience. And finally, I'll give an example of how translating brand values into concrete CX initiatives can create a transformation program that touches every part of the organization. So thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to take any questions if we have the facility to do so.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was so interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, I have a question myself. So you've made a very bold statement regarding how the CXO should be the new CMO and how the CXO should be basically managing the brand and the marketing initiatives. I totally agree, because I see, and I've witnessed this in several organizations, that there's actually conflict. That the CX professional, yes, the CX professional is supposed to work on all touch points that the customer goes through, but a lot of them are not actually under the leadership of that person. And yeah, this is what causes conflict. So how do you suggest to convince or get the buy-in of leadership teams to actually merge those functions together? What, yeah. Would it be like a prototype or a control group where you would like try to have like an example of testing it in a certain way? How would you convince the leadership teams?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I've worked in roles where there's been competition between the CX and the marketing functions, and that can be a healthy tension, or it can be unhelpful. Yeah, a couple things that spring to mind on your question. I think firstly, having strong sponsorship from the board and the CEO will start to clarify, will help to solve that, without a doubt. So if you haven't got that sponsorship, you're kind of dead in the water to begin with anyway. But more importantly, that I think the sponsorship needs to be focused on what types of model you want to implement. And I could this isn't either an either or approach. I think it is kind of a spectrum, and you can choose where you want to be on it. But at one end of the spectrum, you could be a highly centralized and operational CX team. And by that, I mean you would have all of the skills necessary to deliver within that team. And you would then move the marketing. You might move BPM. You might move call center, complaints, all under the CXO, so that he has direct managerial control of those functions in a highly centralized model. The other option would be that you, or the other end of the spectrum would be that you could have a more distributed model where the CXO is setting the strategy and direction. He's kind of the brains of the program, but the bronze and the operational aspects still happen in underlying departments, and the marketing and the BPM and the complaints and contact centers sit separately. In that latter example, sponsorship will be even more important to drive that through. And I think in some ways it needs the model that you choose needs to be aligned to the maturity of the organization.
Absolutely.
Perhaps in a less mature organization, it is a more preferable to have centralized control over those. In a more mature organization that's used to working across functional boundaries and collaborating and shared KPIs towards a common goal, you can get away with the latter example. Does that help? Or
yeah, a lot. Thank you, Peter. Do we have any other questions, Mohammed?
No other questions, Seba. We could proceed with the next presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Peter. This was very, very insightful. Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have CX strategies for rising above the pandemic, challenges and solutions. So this presentation is by Sachin Bhatia. He is the co-founder and global sales and marketing head for Ameo. Welcome to the summit, Sachin. I see you were in the previous summit as well, always adding a lot of value. Sachin is as I said, so he's the co-founder of Ameo. He's actually a computer scientist as well by education, and he's been involved in understanding needs and delivering customer engagement solutions to a lot of consumer-facing companies. And he's been in this for the last 16 years and actually worked with customer experience leaders over 60 countries. Very, very impressive. So thank you, Sachin. The floor is yours.
My pleasure, Hiba. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, good morning. And first of all, a prayer and a wish that everybody around you, your loved ones, family, friends, everybody is safe. Very happy to be at the CX Summit GCC. And while Peter was speaking, I was reminded of a philosophy that I read, or a strategy that I read by Simon Sinek called Why, What, How, and how the design pyramid possibly reflected that you start with the why, that what is it that you're aiming to change, and then get to the how, and then the what, or what exactly needs a change. So beautiful illustration there, Peter. Loved it. Okay, so for today's topic, and just confirm if my screen is visible, guys. Okay, so for today's topic, all of us were taken aback when the pandemic happened, and for the sake of today's discussion, I would talk about the contact center function per se and the changes that we have seen being thrown upon and then being chosen during the pandemic. And there are two clear trends that we want to talk about, what we have learned from our customers across Asia, Middle East, and Africa. The first is the role of the contact center actually changing today, right? And this is in context of the pandemic. We want to talk about remote customer engagement because that's a reality some of us were thrown into and not by choice, but a lot of us are now choosing to look at it very seriously, and we have done a survey across the region, and we're going to share some results of how people are thinking about remote. We're also going to talk about challenges that we see happening with the remote model being deployed. And then there is one very important point of human-to-human interaction, which is very close to my heart. I want to touch that, and that's also a learning that I've had talking to a lot of leaders in the region. So let's talk about the role. Right? Contact center typically considered a cost center, and it supports sales process, whether it's telesales, whether it's remote sales, chat. Those are the functions that contact center used to play, and a very operational KPI heavy role. And a lot of businesses are reliant on some sort of physical touch point especially in our parts of the world, right? In the emerging geos, there's still a lot of physical touch, whether it's compliance that mandates it, or whether it's the human element of the culture. There's still a lot of human-to-human touch that is required. Sometimes even a physical touch required for you to complete a sales service collections process. It varies a little bit across the region. But with pandemic, that option was taken off the table. So you couldn't, for example, visit your customer for a high value loan. Uh, if you were a service center, you couldn't actually go because there was limitations on where you could visit in certain parts. And we saw the flux of interactions coming to the contact center, and contact center not just interacting but actually now trying to close the loop with these processes, right? So a lot of sales processes, and we work with some very large contact center driven sales businesses in the region, the largest being Byju's in India, about 9,000 agents focused on sales. And they were setting appointments earlier, and there was a field visit that was done, but everything then was being driven from the contact center. So our discussion with the customer engagement leaders, contact center leaders, or the business leaders now indicates that contact center is going to play a more central function and not just a support function in sales service collection support or even onboarding, right? We saw a use case of video KYC being done in India, which was not even part of the contact center earlier, but that whole onboarding was being done through the contact centers because there was no other option. But all this was thought to be temporary, right? It's still thought to be temporary. But then we started asking the leaders that do you see this to be a long-term thing? Whether there's a chance of disruption of how contact centers were being done in the past and in the future with the changing role. The first thing that was told to us was that the channels are being explored, right? Because voice as a channel was extremely difficult to run remote, sometimes because of regulation, sometimes because of infra. There was also the adoption of digital channels that got accelerated because of the pandemic, right? There were already some of these channels, but the acceleration, in some of the cases, we have seen 10 times more adoption of chat and experimentation with voice bots and chatbots happening to augment the additional traffic. And I'll give you a stat. The minimum increase that we have seen in interactions in the region is 20%. So pre-pandemic, if you were at, let's say, 10,000 calls a day, just after pandemic, that number has increased by 20%. And it's steady, it's not decreasing. And as the contact center plays more central role, it's actually increasing. A lot of people started looking at remote as a long-term solution, right? Should we move remote or should we move hybrid for long run? And there are some very clear advantages. The biggest advantage is if you look at cost of infrastructure versus cost of agent salary, there's a pretty significant ratio there. And contact center being a high cost pressure function, if you're able to reduce even, let's say, 25% of the agent's cost, which was being spent on infrastructure, and maybe spend a little bit of that in enabling that, that's about 10 to 12% gross margin impact on that side of the business, which is huge in a contact center function. The outsourced contact centers themselves run at the overall margin of 10 to 12%. So there's potential of a huge disruption happening if contact centers can do this successfully and remotely. We also saw that agents being in their home cities or near their families, there was overall a higher satisfaction. And this was a challenge, whether you will be able to run it operationally or not, which will come to the challenge part. But the overall workforce satisfaction was high when they were running remote, given that they had or were provided for the infrastructure required to do their work. And of course, this means that now the talent available is limitless because you're not bound by geographical limits of where you could get your talent. So those were three sort of big advantages that we saw. But there were three big challenges that were also unearthed. The first challenge was when you're switching, contact center is a very infrastructure heavy function. And when you're switching from a very controlled IT environment to a work from anywhere environment, so let's say that an agent says I'm not able to log in. In a typical contact center environment, IT would be able to monitor this, come solve, and this thing can get resolved. But in a remote environment, who do you trust? Do you trust the network? Do you trust the device? Or do you trust the agent, right? And hence, this governance of remote infrastructure and how do you make sure that it's secure? People are not taking screenshots, not taking recordings. How are you able to ensure that was the number one challenge. And we've been working with our customers in solving it. But that's the topmost challenge that we have heard from the market. And I'll be sharing some poll results towards the later part of the presentation. The second was when you're running a contact center as a KPI-oriented function, there's a lot of focus on functional KPIs. However, when you're running this completely remote, there has to be more entrepreneurial spirit there. So I think a different kind of business operations monitoring would be required. It will not be super processized, but there will be leeways, there will be freedoms, and the end goals will matter more than KPIs like how many calls did you handle versus how many conversions did happen or what was the NPS of those calls. So that's another trend that we have observed. If you're running remote, micromanagement is not the solution. Ownership is going to be solution, which would also mean that maybe a different kind of workforce would be more suited than what it is, or a reskilling, retraining might be required for our current workforces and processes. And the third, and this is a difficult one, because of which we think that complete remote versus hybrids would be preferred. Contact center has tribal knowledge, right? If I've joined a contact center and if I'm facing a difficult call or a difficult interaction, I would talk to my buddy. And yes, there are those knowledge bases, but I would talk to my buddy and say, hey, how do you, what do you do? And that knowledge, how do you now translate in a remote environment? And we believe that there has to be a hybrid where people will come to those central hubs to learn, to bond, and then go back to their environments and work. So those are the three top challenges that we heard. We did a poll with over 100 contact center leaders, and the first question we asked is, what's your stand on remote contact center? Is it for you? Is it long-term implementation, short-term process till pandemic hit, or you're still undecided? And 43% of the folks have already at the management level decided this to be a long-term strategy. They are still experimenting with whether hybrid, complete remote, what sort of models would work. The second category is saying, no, it's short-term, we'll go back to our offices. And there's a whopping 35% which is undecided. But given the trend and the advantages, we believe that over 50% of the contact centers are going to be run remote in the region for the advantages that it offers. The second poll that we did was what was the top of the mind challenge when you're thinking remote, and IT governance and security seems to be the top of the mind, followed equally by the operations and collaboration problem and the business operations monitoring problem. So we'll have to think about our KPIs differently, and we'll have to onboard people differently, are the two follow-up problems. But making sure that the remote infrastructure can be trusted and you can find truth seems to be the biggest top of the mind challenge that folks have. Okay. I'll just talk a little bit about Ameo solutions. We have moved over 50,000 reps to a work from home model across the region. And we purpose-built our solution around the three problems that you just saw. Some of the things that are possible is you're able to get device data in real time and monitor whether everything is okay. So when an agent says there's a problem, you can pinpoint the problem is device, network, or everything seems to be okay. Similarly, on the application side, so for IT teams, you can run this with trust, and for supervisor teams, you'll be able to make sure that you can run as efficiently and collaborate as efficiently as you were doing when you guys are in office. The second problem that I want to talk about, and before that, let me run a quick poll with the audience. Sarfaraz, if you have the poll, can we start that poll? Okay, so the question is, now that there is increased volume, there are a couple of options that you have. You could add more call center agents, you could add call center bots, whether it's voice or other channels, doesn't matter. Or you are actually looking to do both to handle volumes. If you're not experiencing volumes, then maybe a priority that you have for the next few months. But this would give us an interesting perspective on how people are thinking about the increased role of the contact center. And there's a lot of, and I think the previous speaker also mentioned that if you're looking at a brand experience, how about automation? And he gave a very good example of using AI to mine data to find the persona, which I think is a very, very good use case for AI. But I'm talking about the actual front face when a human being tries to reach you. What is your preference today? We'll just wait for the poll results to come in. Do we have the results?
I'm just sharing the results, Sachin.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So 7% of the folks will add more call center agents. 20% of the folks will definitely add bots, and 73% feel both of the above is required. That's a very, very interesting trend. Why would you require both of them if it's just a question of increased volume? So I think most of us are looking at bots as an experiment or a fear of missing out, but that's what we expected as a result, that it's not one way or the other. People are looking at both augmenting agents with bots as well as adding more agents to their contact center function. Can we switch back to my presentation? Sarfraz, can we switch back to my presentation?
Yes, you can. 1 second.
Let me just see if
You can continue with the presentation.
so my presentation visible now?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So when we went out, we realized that there's this homogenized journey of a message bot human, and I'll give an example of the journey that is getting constructed in some very, very interesting use cases. The first thing that we observed is it usually starts with a message, right? So whether your message was looked at as an ad or a text message or a notification on the app, or these days the most interesting medium that we have seen is WhatsApp. So let's say that there was a loan reminder or a credit card reminder or a offer that was displayed to me. Now, if I want an interaction or more information within that message window, one is able to then get that information in a conversational way. The term for this is called conversational marketing. So you basically got a hook through a message. You went onto a bot. The bot can disseminate a simple information. What's the interest rate? How do I open an account? Or even take a guided process. And then as soon as the bot feels that a human being is required, a human being is brought into the conversation. Those journeys are very, very interesting. So it starts with message, then bot, then human being. Now, let me talk a little bit of philosophy here. All of you have been in, forced into what I would call solitude, right? You're not physically meeting people a lot. Now, my question is, are we more in touch with our friends and family or less? And I'm not talking about immediate family. And think about your friends. Are we more in touch or less in touch? And interestingly, post-pandemic, people are more in touch with their friends and families. And if you think why that is happening, because there is more anxiety. And whenever there is more anxiety, it's only a human being who will be able to elevate that anxiety for another human being. And the same is what is observed in a enterprise to consumer interaction. I think the consumer is more anxious today. Well, whether my order is going to be delivered, are you serving at this time or not? And the faster you bring in the human being, it's not just information, it's also addressing anxiety. So don't think of a bot only strategy. Think of a message bot human journey very, very carefully, and bring in a human being to answer in whatever channel, right? Whether it's chat or voice, bring that human being very, very quickly to address that, because the person on the other side is anxious, and anxiety cannot be handled through a bot. The second is, you could do this across channels. So if cost is a concern, and I know that GCC, the penetration of social media is really high. We have seen some very, very interesting use cases around WhatsApp initiated conversation with customers, whether it's conversational marketing or customer service from a transactional message. You need not think voice only, but you could augment channels, and this could depend on a use case. So this very recent development that Google has brought in, Google Business Message. So when you're searching for a business in Map or on the Google search, there's an option now to immediately interact with the business to a bot or a human being right from within the Google search window. And chat is a great use case for that, that somebody was searching. Instead of taking him through a website, I think chat is more personalized, and the conversion can happen there and then for marketers. But now let's think of a more complicated use case. Let's think that this was a healthcare inquiry, or let's say you were trying to buy something for your kid as an educational package, right? A lot of us are doing that. Would you prefer talking to a bot? This is a high anxiety sale that is happening, and typically was done face to face, or a sales guy being in the field. For those kind of interactions, we believe a channel like video will actually take over. And actually, this morning itself, we have launched a video contact center. Earlier, last month, we launched a video KYC use case. We believe that video is going to play a very, very critical role in the contact center, and not in all kind of interactions, but there are some use cases which were very heavily reliant on the physical face-to-face touch will actually be done on video now, because wherever there is more attention required, right? If customer is deserving your attention at that point of time, there is no other medium like video that reflects attention, and that also allows you to perceive more about the customer, right? So wherever there is more perception and more attention required, video would be the channel that would come in and replace physical for obvious advantages. You could now record, have an AI analyze it, improve that process, and I think a lot of physical will move to video. It is already happening in a B2B scenario, right? Like the summit today. But I think in the B2C scenario, video is the next big thing, where enterprises and consumers are going to talk to each other on video for some very high value interactions. So think of what we said. There is, in general, more anxiety. I think there is more human to human touch required, but there are also cost pressures. So think about your journeys as a message bot human being, and then within the human being, have the channels facilitated for a fast moving, low cost transaction or a low attention transaction, have chat. For higher attention, have voice. and for the highest level of attention, have video. And that would be a disruption in, whoever is adopting that. I think their attention to detail to the customer would just be mind-boggling and differentiated from the market. Yeah, a little bit about us again. We work with a lot of verticals, but the primary verticals in the Middle East that we have done work is government, banking, finance, and real estate. Customers across GCC, so UAE, Saudi, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and availability of partners in those markets. If you want to know more, please get in touch with us on info@ameo.com. Thank you. That's what I wanted to talk about. Good luck, stay safe, and happy engaging with your customers as human beings. If there are any questions, I can take them now.
Thank you very much for that, Safin. It's very, very useful. Mohammed, do we have any questions coming in?
No questions as of now, but I do expect something. In the meantime, probably Heba, if you have anything, maybe you can put it across to Sachin.
Sure. I think maybe it's not a question, but more of like agreeing to what you were saying. So I've witnessed several companies that were so reluctant with the whole idea of like remote contact centers, and they were like thrown in the deep end. They were forced into it. And it was amazing seeing the leadership teams going, oh, this is actually working, and it was cost efficient and everything. And all those like concerns, and I think their biggest concern, and it showed on your poll, was the governance. The first thing that I heard was like, how do we ensure that everyone's working? How do we know that they're not sleeping? And, like, how do we have the right KPIs in place? So I think, the results that you showed us are around 48%, I think, or 42. I think it would definitely go beyond 50, like you said, because, and I've seen this not only in the remote contact centers, actually globally in even different functions that we've learned to work remotely. So there was definitely a big advantage to that. But I think what you were discussing regarding not losing the human touch would make this, a recipe for success. So definitely, I mean, with the bots and everything, I think it's all about the constant feeding of the machine learning from the actual agent. So you could never, live without the human side. So I think it's the constant cycle of feeding the system with the human opinion and the feedback. But definitely, totally agree. Yeah.
The attention required, so while how much attention can you give as a human being and then as a bot? I think every interaction or every journey, one just has to figure out how much attention of a human being is required. If zero attention is required, right, a bot would solve it. But most cases, there is still attention required because the customer is anxious on the other side. And I think that is what is defining the choice of channel from message, bot, human to human on chat, human to on voice, and then human on video, which is the highest form of attention. And I think interesting times for all of us to see that how channels would get disrupted. There'll be more bots, but I think there'll be more humanized interactions, both happening at the same time in the contact center today from where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a customer, if I was given the choice, obviously I'm asking something that maybe another like 1,000 customers have asked. So I've been given the choice that a bot is going to answer me within 30 seconds as opposed to a human answering me in 2 minutes. I would definitely go for the 30 seconds if it's not, affecting the transaction and my feelings. So definitely. So this is the way forward.
So what's my account balance? Doesn't require any attention and can be answered by a bot. But I am stuck, and where do I find the nearest ATM? Probably, if you started the sentence with "I'm stuck," you're anxious. Probably a human being is a better choice. But what are where are your nearest ATMs? Reflect lower level of anxiety, and a bot can answer that. So it's going to be very interesting NLP application on can you sense anxiety in customers' question, and can you now bring a human being at the right time? So I'm thinking it's a inverse function of anxiety. More anxious the customer is, you need a human being to answer that as soon as possible, right? Not a bot as soon as possible. Bot will not be able to elevate anxiety. But good, thank you. Anything else?
No, I was just saying you would measure the anxiety with like sentiment analysis with certain keywords, right?
NLP, yeah, NLP. You apply NLP and see the anxiety level in the question.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sachin.
My pleasure. See you guys. All the best.
Okay, next up is our very, very interesting panel discussion. I'm going to hand over actually to the moderator, which is Peter, who I've introduced earlier this morning. It's interesting. I mean, I'll let you explain the topic, but it's interesting to look beyond and to look at, you know, like I was saying earlier, it's not about the businesses and the strategies that they look at on their own. It's more of us cooperating now, collaborating globally, and of course, nationally. So I think looking at the citizen experience is very, very interesting, and it's a new thing. And obviously, this is the right time with the pandemic to be looking at something like this. So the floor is yours, Peter, and yeah, we'll take it from there. I can't hear you, Peter. Are you muted?
I am. I'm not anymore.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Eva, for the introduction. Do we have all the other panelists here, if they could enable their video as well? So for this next session, it's going to be a panel discussion. And we want to focus on something maybe a little bit different, which is about crafting the citizen experience. As part of the Vision 2030 program in Saudi Arabia, we want to, there are a whole range of portals, government portals, and ministries are all providing different services. And there's a view that we need to better craft the citizen experience. And we'd like to talk about the key pillars of that national vision, specifically understanding where digital usability can be enhanced, how to go about addressing some of the growing citizen demands, and empowering citizens through conversation. So we've got three panelists we're very lucky to have here today. The first is Ms. Leila Al-Qurashi. She works as customer experience and corporate communications consultant at the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development. Leila has more than a decade of experience in the airline industry and started with Sama Airline back in 2006, where she established a customer service unit. She joined Flynas in 2009 to establish the Customer and Quality Service Department, and in 2016 shifted to look after KSA franchise sales within Flynas. More recently, Leila joined the General Authority of Civil Aviation in 2017 as the head of follow-up customer service and then head of communication channels. We also have Ashfaq Baha, experienced chief officer within the telecommunications and digital industries. She is skilled in business planning, digital marketing, analytical skills, contact center, and has a bachelor's degree focused in computer science. And finally, just in the nick of time, joined by Khalid Al-Omar. Khalid joins us from the national program, gov.sa, where he's the director, and is focused on having a unified experience in government services, and is aiming to do that by engaging the main customers and citizens and residents in the experience. He's also an agile software engineer and product manager. So we're very lucky to have all three of you. I think just to maybe kick off the topic, Khalid, it would be helpful if maybe you could start by giving us a brief overview of the government's citizen experience program, if you could, please. Khalid, are you there? Khalid, are you able to hear us? Okay, Leila and Ashfaq, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So maybe we'll come back to Khalid in a moment. But Leila, maybe I'll start with you. I know when we chatted yesterday, you were talking about the importance of customer insight and how to understand expectations and measure satisfaction. And I really see that as a key sort of building block before you can embark on harmonizing the citizen experience. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you go about understanding customer needs and measuring satisfaction. Leila? I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. First of all, we need to understand our customer needs. Our customer, the category of customers, like many facts of good CX design process, the key of successful in CX analysis is empathy. Empathy with customer needs, desires, the context in which they use the product, either through the mobile app, ongoing mobile app, or their desktop at work, for example, what their expectations and perceptions are of the product, and so forth. Though through user researches form the foundation of the design process early on, connecting the users' needs should be ongoing. The best way to gain and maintain empathy is engage with the customer, or keep going engaging with the customers and users as much as possible, whether it's through user testing or for example, customer support as a founder, or regularly engaging with user in some other way. This becomes especially important when attempting to improve the usability of the digital product beyond initial launch.
Okay. And what challenges are you facing doing that user research? How do you go about doing that and overcoming that challenge?
Trying to identify the customer, because we have many kind of customers in government sector based on the business need, and analyzing their feedback, their needs. But serving them is the heart of our job, to serving them. But to exceed their expectation, this is hard. So, and the most important challenge is using omni-channels, or using social media, or using the email, trying to using the technology. Most of them of government sector customers wanted to or prefer to visit us in the offices, not emailing us or talk to us through the web chat, for example, or through chatbot or whatever. So this is the challenge.
Okay. Okay.
We are trying to force them to use the technology part as much as we could.
Okay. And are you then using that insight, Leila, to develop sort of personas that describe each segment and customer needs, or how are you using that insight?
We are trying to understand their expectation from the services, how we deliver the service, and trying to improve how we deliver this service for them via the technology-wise as much as we could. We are trying to hear their feedback, but they prefer to talk to us directly, face to face, or through the phone, rather than using the technology. Even you are sending the survey, the feedback is totally different when you talk to them face to face, or get their opinion or their feedback to understand the pain points and how we use these pain points to enhance the services.
It's interesting. So it sounds like you're using both surveys, and are you running focus groups or having direct conversations with customers?
Yes, yes. Well, this is very important for government customers.
Okay. And are you running those conversation customers yourself, or conducting engaging market research companies to do that?
You can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's a hard job because even if you have a big ministry like our ministry, and you have branches through the KSA, so it's hard. Even you will find the category of customer will be different as well from region to region. So you have to have a focus group with another companies.
Yes. Yeah, we did the same thing at Riyadh Bank. We would use surveys to identify potential problem
Yeah,
areas and then invite customers in to run focus groups with them and drill down
exactly.
on the issue. It's so important, you know, you can't be customer centric if you don't have good customer insight and understand what customers' needs and desires and frustrations are. So it's a really important step. Ashfaq, I know that you're focused more on private companies than the um, commercial sector, but still, customer insight is quite a key sort of component of the CX design process. How are you understanding customer needs where you're at?
Okay, let's start with the e-commerce part, which is providing a lot of services for our citizens. If we talk about the citizen here in case A, so in this case, we need to have a full journey for the customer experience, starting from the knowing itself until we reach the last one, which is the loyalty, for example. So we need to have each one of them, and we have a good plan in most of these e-commerce, which we have here in case A, to focus on all touch points. Starting from, for example, knowing how the customer will know about the service or about the product. Then after that, how to buy it or how to join this kind of service, how to download it. Then after that, how to contact the customer care if they feel that they need support or they need more information. There is part of buying the service, how to pay, what the challenges, how to do it. Then after that, we have the loyalty, and we have also the part which is related to how to return our customer if we have, you know, some of them already left or don't use our
Yeah.
service. So all these touch points, which is very important to be built under any kind of service which we can provide it to our customer, then we are doing a lot of gap analysis, how to contact the customer through surveys. Sometimes you are visiting them and do some surveys face to face. In some cases, we need at the same time to consider also the experience that they have it for the good or silent customer that we have it, because every time we are contacting the customer who's very active and complaining all the time. In some cases, we need also to go to the silent customer who's using the service without even contact the customer care or marketing or whatever. So all the e-commerce company that we have here in KSA, they are focusing, and as a consultant, I'm working with the many e-commerce companies here in KSA, so they are focusing more on all these touch points to improve it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you mentioned user journeys. Yeah, I think based on what Layla was saying about capturing the customer insight, it's then very important to feed that into the user journey mapping process so that you can design better solutions for customers. So we might come back to that in a moment. I just wanted to come back to Khalid. Khalid, you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you right now.
That's great, and we can hear you. I just wanted to go back because we wanted to kind of explore the citizen experience and how we go about crafting that citizen experience. But I thought it might be helpful if maybe you could give us a brief overview of the government's citizen experience program. And no doubt insight and journey mapping will come into that. But if you could give us an overview of what the Saudi government's vision is for citizen experience and the scope of the program, that would be really useful.
Right. So glad that I finally can hear you guys and you can hear me. You had a bit of troubles at the beginning. Okay. So regarding the government experience, we started the digital transformation about let's say 12 years ago, and each ministry and each government agency, they were running to do the digital transformation in their organization. So they started, converting their traditional services to be more of an online service. And that, with that, they have created more than 3,000 online services. For the citizen or resident, it created a confusion where to go. With this very vast amount of services, they don't know where to go, which one they should, start the service for. Then the government looked at, again, back at which the best scenarios to do is by listening to the customer, having the feedbacks from the citizen himself, what they want, what they're looking for. So then we knew that they, based on the feedbacks that we got, is they want a simplified service, fast and convenient. They can access anywhere from anywhere, at any time. So with that, we had this vision, is to create the Gov, that is a portal, which is a national unified experience, unifying all the experience to be into one-stop shop. But it's not like we have every service in this one-stop shop. Again, we are not doing anything or fixing anything again, but we looked at it to in the matter of a life experience, life moments.
Okay.
If someone like graduated from university or high school, what's the experience then? How do they go about registering to a university? How do they go about getting their first job, starting their career? Guiding them, having this all services coming together into one moment. It was more of something that the customer wants or the citizen wants.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've kind of done, well, like Layla and Ashraf, you've done the sort of customer insight, understanding customer needs, but you've also done the sort of, I call it user journey mapping, but for you it was more sort of customer lifetime, mapping the journey from graduation, presumably, to getting married, to having a child, to buying your home. If you mapped out the whole customer lifetime,
So we have discovered more of like 30 life moments, about 30 life moments. Okay. And each of these life moments were more of, we started simple, like giving birth, for example. And we started as hearing giving birth, then even at the end, if someone wants to get divorce, for example, how that will happen, so these moments is exactly what the customer know, what the citizen know about. They know about their moments,
But those moments must be managed in a number of different portals that are delivered by a number of different ministries. So how do you harmonize that across so many? Because I think you mentioned yesterday you had thousands of sort of portals or services. How do you begin to harmonize the experience?
So what we have done is there is a government project called GSB. This government project is like a government service bus. It's basically connecting all the government services into one layer, and from that layer, each agency wants any information or any data, they can connect to this one endpoint. By that, we have achieved, by connecting all the government services into one place, and now we can create experience from above. We can create layer experience from this base layer.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there's a balancing act here, because the central government can't build everything for every ministry and every agency. but yet you want to give how do you balance the needs between the business needs of each ministry or agency, or indeed commercial organizations, and the national agenda? How do you balance that?
Well, each experience has a leader. Okay, so each one will have a leading. For example, like giving a birth, there is 3 big entities that leading this: Ministry of Health and Ministry of Interior, and then we have a sub entity which is the Ministry of Health. They have something called hospitalized centers. So these 3 big entities, they will lead this file.
Okay.
In collaborating with having feedbacks from the customer. We, as in Yes program, we try to get these feedbacks for them. Right now, in each we have channels to get these feedbacks with each page in Gov.sa, for example, or even we have a contact center that right now is helping about 200 government agency. So we get lots of data. We know exactly what the customer wants. We know what they ask about, what's cost. So by that, we give them these requirements, and they will have to achieve it somehow and host it in one of the portals. Yeah.
So you're able to kind of facilitate the customer insight gathering process, share that with the underlying entities, and then
exactly. We have created a framework that ensure these steps are followed. Each life experience will take about 6 months to plan and develop. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So I just want to move the conversation on a little bit, because one of the things that about engaging citizens is that obviously they need to have a readiness to transact online. Many customers, their first interaction will be with social media. And indeed, from what I've seen of living in Saudi Arabia, is that Saudis are voracious consumers of social media content, but maybe have been later to adopt e-commerce applications than some Western countries. So I wonder if maybe e-commerce readiness, you get your citizens ready to engage in e-commerce, that doesn't kind of help government engage with citizens. I just kind of want to turn to Ashwak and ask you, how do you see e-commerce growing in Saudi Arabia? And do you think there's a difference considering CX and e-commerce in Saudi?
Really, it's growing. We can say growing crazy. Yani, mashallah, what we can see now here in KSA, a lot of people, they are depending to using this kind of e-commerce. All the services provided. Even if you want to clean your car, you can do it at home. So it's very easy to bring it. So there is a lot of services provided for food delivery, for grocery, for example, for shopping, for even the doctor. There is a lot of e-commerce. We can say it like application or digital platform that you can even request the doctor to come and visit you, for example. So there is a part of application and digitalization that it's considered there. And at the same time, there is an e-commerce which is make the life of our citizens very easy. So if he just think about anything, he can bring it from anywhere in a very easy way. So it's growing in Saudi Arabia, and even there is a small established startup, we can say startup company, that they will start to do everything related to this kind of the services. So here in KSA, it's really growing.
It is exploding, isn't it? And maybe that's driven by, it started before the pandemic with ride hailing, Uber, and everybody's using Uber and Careem and other services like that. But I think with the pandemic now, probably it's branching out into more grocery delivery, and it really is exploring. You see a difference? Sorry, go ahead.
And we can even during the previous months, let's say, I know that the team will talk about it tomorrow, inshallah, in one of the panels. So during the COVID-19, we feel the need of this kind of services, because during the last, let's say, 4 or 5 months, we have lockdown, we cannot go out, so a lot of services that we needed to be provided. In case A, it's different because the lifestyle of a lot of the people is different than out of case A, because still there is some of the female cannot drive. Still we have some of the needs. Some of them they don't have driver. So this kind of service is really, really important in case A. And at the same time, it's different. It's related to different segments in Saudi Arabia. For the food delivery, you can, for example, consider the youth as the highest team or the highest segment that they are using this kind of service. If we go to the grocery, no, it's the female more than this. So it's completely different. And the required kind of customer experience evaluation and the gap analysis is really useful to understand the kind of segment to provide even the right product, the right marketing plan, the use cases which you need even to explore it to the customers, just to convince them to use the service or to use the product that you have. So in case A, even because we are, alhamdulillah, a very big country, so even if you go to the west, east, or even central, different customers, different segment, and even different needs as well.
Behaviors, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So do you see a challenge in migrating people from offline channels to online channels, or is that just happening?
No, I think for the e-commerce, you can sit at home and you can experience everything and you can do everything at home. And okay, I know that it's because it's long time now you want to go to the office and meet the people and everything. But for e-commerce itself, it's very easy to manage everything from remotely. Even if you have a customer service, you can manage it remotely. If you have the operation as well, because in e-commerce or on digital platform, it's not necessarily to meet the customer face to face. So it's very easy and it's not impacted at all when we have the previous experience or the current experience which you have with the COVID-19.
Yeah, it's interesting because having worked both lived both in the UK and in Saudi, one of the things I noticed is that in the UK, e-commerce was driven much more by big brands. You know, Tesco's doing grocery delivery or Amazon, but in Saudi it seems to have a more entrepreneurial flavor. You've got much smaller companies, you know, setting up cupcake shops on Instagram, or delivery. You know, Marsul, for example, is you tell me what you want, I'll go get it for you. So it's a much more sort of organic and, in some ways, a more agile e-commerce environment. And now you're seeing that explosion.
And it's very easy even to establish or to start this kind of business here in case A, because most of the requirement that you needed to build this kind of industry is very, very easy to have it. From the part related to delivery or even the application itself, everything is available. It's very, very easy to be implemented. So at the same time, if we just want to consider what will differentiate this kind of product from, for example, XYZ or the big brand, it's very easy just to put your value proposition in the right way. Then you can go ahead and you can have a lot of customers who can use your service.
You don't have to build everything yourself. There's software as a service that you can use in the cloud, and it's got a business up and running. I just want to turn to Khalid briefly and ask, do you see the citizens' demands of the government services are changing as a result of the pandemic?
Yes, of course. Right now, we are on the movement of distance education.
Yeah.
So we were focused in the past 2 months about distance education, how we can help the Ministry of Education to thrive in this difficult time, and how can help them to have this big platform that can host, you know, more than 6 million concurrent user. You know, imagine at one time it's require, you know, a big infrastructure and a big team with great experience, so they can pull that off in just a matter of 2 months.
It's interesting. In a way, the pandemic has been, while it's tragic, it's been good for digitalization and customer experience, because it's all about service to your door, and now companies and the government are needing to respond to that and provide services. So I see that a lot of the changes that are happening as a result of the pandemic will stay. People will keep conducting business online. They'll keep using, they might not go back to the office full time, and they'll keep using remote working technologies.
Exactly.
So we talked about sort of customer insight and the need to capture, customer input as part of the design process. We've talked about user journey mapping and the importance of sort of mapping out, in your case, mapping out the lifetime journey of the customer. But I just want to turn to, how do you know if we've got it right? And I'm thinking specifically here about measuring customer satisfaction. And do you have, what metrics can we put in place to make sure that we've actually delivered something that is useful for our customers and our citizens? So I'll just maybe take turns answering that. Leila, do you have a view on that? How do you measure satisfaction?
Yeah, because delivering services, again, it's for the citizen is the heart of what we do in government sector or for the agencies. Tasks like renewing license or paying tax or, for example, applying for benefits are often the most tangible interactions citizens have with their government. Service are therefore critical in shaping trust and perception for public sector. Citizens today expect more transparent, accessible, and responsive services from the public sector. And those expectations are raising. Many governments have made efforts to improve their services and the delivery of their services through online portals or one-stop shop, as what Khaled mentioned, like centralized call centers, but find they are still unable to meet the public expectations. Citizens still public sector officials, and it's been confirmed via survey through McKinsey to government sector there, that they found that they continue to feel frustrated by comparison or confusing websites, and find it's often still necessary to speak with multiple parties before their question gets answered or whatever, or the request is completed. As a result, government face not only declining citizen satisfaction and eroding public trust, but also increasing costs associated with delivering services across multiple channels. Part of the problem that many governments continue to design and deliver the services based on their requirements and internal process instead of the needs of people that we serve. But some government and agencies have successfully implemented a customer centric approach to service design and delivery. There are four elements of implementing transformation efforts aimed at increase citizen satisfaction and reducing costs. By measuring citizen satisfaction, keep measuring citizen satisfaction. Let citizen let you what matter for them most, and try to avoiding to ask them directly. Identify natural breakpoints in customer satisfaction and combine public feedback with internal data to uncover the hidden pain points.
Okay, good. And Ashfaq, how do you measure success? Because it seems in the e-commerce industry, it's driven more by data analytics and web analytics. How do you know if you're designing services?
For sure, we have a lot of KPIs to be considered, but I think all the people will agree with me that there is two different. We can have the NPS, which is very important, and how we can recommend our service, and at the same time we have the CSAT, which will be for each touch point exactly. In some touch point, you can use the CSAT just to ensure that the customer is happy from this kind of touch point, from the, let's say that how to buy the service, or even how to contact the customer care. So for the small touch point that you need to have CSAT. But for us, the most important part is the NPS. So how to recommend, if you would like to recommend this product or this service to your friend and family. In this case, you can believe that you have a loyal customer who likes the service, and at the same time he's recommended to others. So these two KPIs is very important just to ensure if we are a success, or still we need to do more to improve our services.
Okay. And Khalid, I guess same question to you. What role can the central government play in measuring success, and how do you know that it's working?
Well, we have done two things. The first one, there is right now a central center to measure, to measure it's like a measurement center to measure each ratings for each portal or each service. This is like a government assigned. It's like a government entity. What they do is basically they add these functions and ratings in each portal, and you can rate them. In our work, we have a simple question in the end of each page or in the end of each service. The question is basically basic. Doesn't have any stars to rate. Doesn't have any. It's not like a rating. It's just a simple question like yes and no answer. What we ask them is, did you benefit from this page? Was this page helpful? That's it.
Yeah.
Was this service helpful for you? If it's yes, then we are fine. If it's no, tell us why.
Yeah.
And that's it. By simplifying how we get the answers, we actually got answers. We got the feedbacks that we wanted, and so with that we improved a lot actually. Still, there is a long road to go to improve to achieve the satisfaction of the citizen, because the citizen, they want more, they want a lot, and we're still in the beginning actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so Peter, if you allow me just to comment on Khalid, what Khalid said. This is something very important. I think that we need to focus on it. How to reach the customer to get their feedback, or even to evaluate their customer experience away. So if we make it very complicated, no one will participate. So the participation rate will be very low. This is something which Khalid just said. And at the same time, the tool that you are using. If you send it as a link, for example, through SMS, the customer will not have the time to go through it and to fill it and do it. But if you have it, something within the service, end of the service, that he will, for example, he purchased something, so at the end, he will just select if he is happy or not in a very simple way, that it will have a more response rate from the customers itself. So something very important that needs to be taken into consideration, especially in evaluating the experience or the satisfaction for our customers.
I agree. It needs to be instantaneous at that touch point. Otherwise, the customer's forgotten what the experience was like by the time he answers it.
Yeah, correct.
So, I mean, it's been really interesting. I just want to try to summarize it. I think what we're seeing here is that there has been an explosion in e-commerce, and also that's kind of aligned with the government vision to digitalize all of the government services. And so you're seeing this happy kind of convergence of demand. If demand is rising, customers really, really are wanting or needing to be able to conduct transactions seamlessly online. And the pandemic, in a way, has helped that or driven that, if you like. The other theme I've kind of heard is the importance of, and it's music to my ears, is the importance of customer insight and understanding customer needs before you go off to design something from your own point of view. the importance of user journey mapping and designing things in a customer-centric way. And then you've also all got really good examples of how you measure that success after you've done that. So I think that's really, really useful insights. I'll open up the floor now to any questions if anybody wants to ask questions of the panel. Mohammed, are you able to coordinate any questions?
Peter, thank you for that. We haven't had any questions from the audience yet. I'm just wondering if Heba has got something that she wants to put out to the panel.
Okay. Heba,
yes, I do actually. Yep, I'm here. Yeah. Thank you for the very, very interesting conversation. I mean, this is amazing. I wish like all countries actually adopt this. We have a lot of pain points here in Egypt. I wish everything was digitalized eventually. My question actually is around the measurement, because the question is like, how fast do the ministries or the entities work on the feedback that comes from the measurement or from the surveys? Because this is the the key success factor. If you're measuring and your response rate is increasing because you're making it easier for customers to respond, but the key success factor here is how fast you resolve the no. So let's say 30% are saying they're not satisfied and they're giving you reasons. So how fast do the ministries and entities cooperate to improve the score?
Interesting. Khaled, are you able to maybe provide a perspective on that? Because you're kind of, I see you at the center of it, coordinating this.
Well, it's difficult. It's not easy at all. It's something that you need a passion. You need a passion. You need, before any tool you can adapt, you need the people to the government agents, or we prefer the champions in the governments. They need to adapt, to have the passion of helping a fellow, because they will help themselves at the beginning. So with that passion, which is we found, we have achieved great results in a short time by centralizing all the feedbacks in one place, centralizing all, having they adapt the tool that we mentioned. We have mentioned some tools to the government's agencies, and they were happy to adapt it. These things helped us to proceed, to get the feedbacks faster and to act.
Can you introduce like gamification? I mean, would you show the different entities the other scores for the other entities as well, so that they kind of like, okay, that's great. So they compete, yeah.
We have actually an award.
Excellent.
We call it we call it Injaz, like an achievement award. This award, people will have to, the government agencies will have to, compete with each other to achieve this award.
That's the best way. Great.
So
Ashwag, you had the question?
Yeah, let's not question. I want to just share one experience which I did it 2014 in one of the telecom which I was working there. So something that we can use it and really recommend it to be done. In that time, we have, the NPS survey on daily basis for certain customer that we are sending that. We are not annoying the customer every time to send it to them. So on a period of time. So in daily basis, we have a small team who's collecting the feedback. We have a system. So we have the rating for that. If it's 9 or 10, okay, it's okay. But if it's from 1 to 6, in this case, we need to review the history for the customer and contact the customer to understand his issue. I remember in that time, it helped us to improve, the percentage of the dissatisfied customers to increase even the NPS. So doing something like that, even not for all, dissatisfied customers, but we can do it randomly for a good number or a good, let's say, segment of the customers who's evaluating us from 1 to 6. I think that will be perfect and will be a good solution, because I tried before and it's worked fine.
Makes sense. What would you say the top two reasons for dissatisfaction? Would it be, for example, usability? Would it be speed of response? What would it be?
The most important part is the speed of response on the complaint. Yani if they have a complaint, they need a very quick response regarding their money or their product, whatever, activation, deactivation, whatever. So this is the most important part. Yani I remember that.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Great.
And I think Laila wanted to share something, Laila. You're
Laila,
muted.
you're muted, yeah.
Sorry. As what Khalid mentioned, that we have a national center here to measure the performance for the entities and the ministries, and through measuring the satisfaction of customers as well. So they are trying to measuring the performance and informing each entity where they can enhance their performance and increase the satisfaction, and how let our services more mature for the citizens.
Good.
Thank you, Laila.
Thank you, everybody. Really enjoyed that. Your time. Hey, Eva, I'll pass back to you if you want to use the next thing.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to actually this day has been very interesting. So we've had quite a few discussions about quite a few very pressing topics today. We started off with Peter. We started and ended the day with Peter. So what was very, very interesting was looking at the fact how brand is a unifier of all the touch points in a corporate, and how the CXO should actually be the new CMO and drive the marketing and brand efforts, and how there is constantly an experience gap between the customer expectations and reality that the corporates deliver, and looking at the brand values and how to actually design them and map them into something that's actually that can actually be implemented. Looking, for example, at the consequences, like whether they're emotional or functional, and the attributes, whether abstract or concrete, was very, very interesting. Actually seeing the customer's voice. So for example, like what Peter was saying, so always there for me translates into the corporate being accessible, reliable, and responsive. Then you break that down into what needs to be done across the different touch points. And of course, what was very important as well is the connection between the customer experience and the employee experience. I think they go hand in hand. So definitely the HR leadership teams play a very, very important role there, where you have to map the brand values as you do for customers, you do for employees as well. And I think that is definitely a recipe for success. That was very, very interesting. Thank you, Peter, for that. And then we went onto the AMEO presentation by Sachin, which was very interesting as well, discussing whether corporates and companies are going to go into the choice of remote contact center and what the challenges were there for that. In terms of IT and governance was the top challenge. And then we had the discussion of humans versus chatbots, and how the way forward would be as a hybrid method of both and using different channels. And then we had this very interesting panel that we've just had looking at how governmental authorities in KSA have really digitalized everything. And as Peter was saying, I think, so this is one of the few advantages of what the pandemic has done to certain countries. I think this is very, very beneficial for them to take a huge step like that, leveraging on customer insights and designing journeys and really bringing everything all together, digitizing all those different services that the government offers to the citizens. And it's amazing to hear that the cycle is complete with the measurement in terms of the NPS and the satisfaction and how they do the competition of Injaz between the different entities. Very, very interesting. I really hope all the countries adopt that. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we have a very interesting day as well. We start again at 12 p.m. UAE time, and looking forward to having you all attend tomorrow. And thank you to all the speakers. It was great. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for the attendees for attending. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Heba.
Thank you, Mohammed.